An event will take place in Boston December 20th to highlight concerns over the lack of progress in recovery for Puerto Rico. The U.S. territory was severely battered by hurricanes this year, with a heavy toll on infrastructure, public health, and education, along with the economy. To tell us about the event in Boston is one of the organizers from 32 BJ SEIU, the director of the commercial division, Otoniel Figueroa-Durán. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks, Chris, for having me.
First of all, talk about what happened to Puerto Rico. Long before these hurricanes this past year, you had an economy that was in extremely bad shape. It still is. Explain what that means.
Puerto Rico has been in an economic recession for 10 years, basically a $70 billion public debt that hedge funds, vulture funds from Wall Street have been forcing the government of Puerto Rico to make payments to the debt instead of Puerto Rico investing in infrastructure, schools, bridges, hospitals. So when the hurricane hit Puerto Rico, we were already in a very, very bad situation. And as I said, Wall Street has a lot to do with that.
And of course, one of the consequences of that over the past few years, you had a lot of people getting laid off. So instead of growing, the economy and the tax revenue was shrinking.
Mm-hmm. Hundreds of thousands of people left Puerto Rico even before the hurricane, right? So we were, groups like us, Vamos for Puerto Rico, were concerned that if something else happened to the economy of Puerto Rico was on the cliff of a disaster. We didn't know about the hurricane, of course, but when the hurricane happened, all our fears came true.
Well, as far as hurricanes, this is not the first time, not the first year certainly, when we've had a really serious hurricane that happened in Puerto Rico. But why is the recovery taking so long? Well, what's going on down there?
You're right. We're in the Caribbean. This is not the first one, but as the 10 years of recession and the lack of public investment because of Wall Street pressure play a role. And also we have a situation that after Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico, almost 1,000 people have died. 29,000 jobs have disappeared, right? Hundreds of thousands of people have left the country, and the federal response to the disaster have been a shame.
Talk about that response, because in terms of agencies going down there trying to get work done, I mean, what's been happening?
In the Puerto Rico right now, there's no way that we can recover, the economy can recover, if the federal government doesn't legislate a type of a Marshall Plan, right? We're not only calling for a Marshall Plan, a huge economic investment from the federal government in Puerto Rico, but also to cancel the Puerto Rico public debt. FEMA and all the agencies have done whatever they can. Probably they can do way more, but that's not the issue. The issue is that this type of small contribution from the federal government are not going to be enough. We're looking for a Marshall Plan and the cancellation of the debt.
Talk about the status of Puerto Rico. It's part of the United States because it's a territory, and at the same time, our laws treat it like a foreign country, especially as far as business is concerned. So explain how that makes things worse.
3.4 million human beings first, right, but American citizens also since 1917. And we have a colonial relationship with the U.S. And frankly, we've been pushing the Congress to do the right thing and not to treat Puerto Rico differently this way. In the tax reform proposed by the Republican Party, we were going to be hit with a very huge tax increase. The community, the diaspora community came to support. We were to go against it. Rather, we were pushing throughout the week, calling members of Congress, lobbying, and finally they decided not to include it in the tax reform. That was going to be a huge blow to the economy of Puerto Rico. But besides that, there are other things in the tax reform that are bad for Puerto Rico. But our concern is that the Marshall Plan that Senator Warren and Senator Markey with Bernie Sanders submitted a couple of weeks ago get passed in Congress.
This has been a news, and we're talking with Otoniel Figueroa-Durán from 32 BJ SEIU. Otoniel, talk about some of those things that are in the plan. How would they help Puerto Rico exactly?
In order for us to be able to get back on track, we need public investment, right? Right now, there's a bankruptcy process for Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is bankrupt. Puerto Rico doesn't have any money, not even to pay the public debt, but even to invest in Puerto Rico recovery. We're at the expense of the federal government right now. We have seen a very minimal support, and we think that in order for that support to be felt by working families in Puerto Rico, we need a Marshall Plan. And that's why on December the 20th, we're going to be in front of the JFK building in Boston, in 9 different cities across the nation, demanding that Congress do the right thing and enact this legislation, a Marshall Plan for Puerto Rico.
And because one thing that shows the need for a serious intervention like this is how much of the island is still without electrical power. I mean, what's the latest you've heard in that?
It's difficult to pinpoint a number of people who has power. What we know is that, for example, there's 9 towns in Puerto Rico that no one living in that town has power. So we think that basically half of the country is still without power, and that obviously is a very concerned situation because of health ramifications and so on.
Yeah, because there's some serious health risks down there. I mean, are kids going to school? I mean, what's going on?
Well, one of the things that we have facing is that the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, is telling Puerto Ricans to boil the water, right, because of the bacteria and all that. Half of the population doesn't have access to power, so they don't have a way to boil the water. Kids are at risk of that, right? The schools are, to try, the schools are trying to reopen and trying to come back to normality, but we cannot go back to be a normal country, kids going to school without the Marshall Plan and the investment from the federal government.
Of course, another consequence is that more people have had to leave the island and come here, and this has happened in your family. Talk about that.
Yes, recently my dad and my sister came from Puerto Rico because of my dad is a diabetic patient, and we don't have the resources in Puerto Rico right now to protect him, so we decided to come here. He's only an example, right, of thousands, that probably more than 200,000 that have left the country. Most of them have located in Florida, but some of them in Massachusetts. Massachusetts, in different school districts, have feeling the impact too of the climate refugees, right, as some people have called them.
Well, I imagine the object of the event on Wednesday the 20th is to show that this is not just a concern for people either of Puerto Rican heritage or who live there, but this is the whole city's problem.
This is an impact for the state, for budget in cities and the state, but also for people who are worried about the lack of respect and dignity that this administration, the federal administration, have shown to minorities. Puerto Rico, 3.4 million American citizens in Puerto Rico being neglected by the federal government, but not only from this administration, but by Congress too.
We should mention exactly when and where this is going to be taking place.
Yes, December 20th, Wednesday, December 20th, at 12 noon at the JFK building in Boston. Vamos for Puerto Rico, a coalition of community and labor organizations that 32BJ and Alianza for Puerto Rico are part of.
And I know you've got some details also on Facebook too?
On Facebook, you can go to our Facebook page, Vamos for Puerto Rico and Alianza for Puerto Rico. We'll have all the details there.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
Otoniel Figueroa-Durán from 32BJ SEIU. We'll have more news in just a moment.